Okay, and we are now live. So, hi, good morning everyone. Welcome to our first ever webinar on coaching conversations. My name is Kash Haroon and I'm a director here at Northwest Employers. And I'm joined by a wonderful panel representing all the different aspects of coaching conversations that you could throw at. But before we go into the panel discussion, I thought I'd introduce what we're about, what Interchange is all about. So this webinar is being led through our Interchange program, which is it's a platform for cross-sector collaboration. And our role here is we're uniquely placed, so we cover both public sector and we connect to private sector, which again is reflected on our panel. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. So I'm going to ask each panel member to introduce themselves and tell me what they absolutely love about coaching. Now, none of this has been rehearsed, so I'm just going to hand the mic to whoever I think looks like they're ready. So, where should we go first? Julia, do you want to go first? You fancy
do I look like I'm ready?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. There you go.
Thank you very much. So, hi, I'm Juliette Kumar. I work for the Innovation Agency, which is an academic health science network for the Northwest Coast. We've recently set up a coaching academy, and so my background is I'm a nurse by background, and I've worked in the NHS for, oh gosh, over 25 years. NHS like a stick of rock, as they say. And what do I love about coaching? Well, I think what coaching gives me is that, well, for one thing, I find it's a real helping activity. And I haven't nursed for about 15 years, so I find I really get a lot of satisfaction about that one-to-one personal relationship with a coachee. So that's on a sort of an individual level, but also I can see it has a real place in transformation. I think there's something about when we learn something and then actually putting it into practice is that cognitive thinking space, not just for individuals but for the whole system. And those coaching conversations, not shutting people down, really enable the whole system to move forward to where we need to go.
Lovely. Right, Jo,
we're
going that way.
Over here.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jo Wright. I'm the editor of Coaching Culture magazine and part of an organisation called Coaching Culture Limited. My background is many years in the private sector in large organisations in many different roles, sales, marketing, change management, learning and development. And then I became a coach and that changed everything. And that's what I love about coaching, is it learning how to coach, and being coached totally changed my life, and it's made such a difference. So what do I love about coaching? It's about how people raise their own self-awareness, challenge themselves, learn to think differently. And my favourite moments in coaching are when people say, I've never thought about it like that before, and actually you can start to see them thinking differently, and it can, to your point, it can really drive transformational change.
Thank you very much. So over on this side, we've got another 3 people. So Sian, do you want to go first? Yeah, on the end.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sian Taylor from Sian Taylor Coaching. So my background is I'm actually a biologist by training. So I spent some time in academia and also in the private sector. And coming back to academia again, I had the opportunity to enhance my coaching skills, and this is where I realised that I could make a real difference. So I'm really focused on helping scientists and people in specialist roles actually take that step change when they take on more management and leadership responsibility, because from my own personal experience it can be quite a difficult journey to actually make. And I think that's what I really love about coaching, is that through my own experience of being coached and also helping others, it can really help you change the way that you look, as you mentioned, Jo, but also get a sense of being able to look back on your own personal journey and realise that you not only made a difference for yourself, but you're also making a difference for other people, for the people that you work with as well. And there's almost a ripple effect out from that, which can be incredibly powerful. So that for me is why I really wanted to focus on coaching and what I hope to be able to do for other people.
Thanks, Sian. Jane?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Jane Atherton. I run my own company. It's called Hoover Consulting. I started that in April this year, so it's a recent startup. which I'm thoroughly enjoying. Part of what I do is coaching senior leaders to overcome challenges that they're facing in the workplace. And but my background is housing. I've always worked in social housing before starting up my own business. So working in social housing for about 30 years. I did a range of roles in social housing. I was frontline at first, delivering services to people who lived in the homes that we managed. But then I moved into organisational development. And as part of that, I introduced a coaching strategy across the business and really saw the difference that it made to employee engagement and transformation in that business. But on a one-to-one basis, the thing that I love about coaching is seeing people grow in confidence. Really seeing that they become more self-aware and realise that they can achieve what they want to do, and have a positive mindset towards that. So that's what I love about coaching.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Emma.
Great, thank you. So I'm Emma Walker-Cotton and I run a consultancy called Causeway Consulting, set up about 7 years ago. My background was in HR and organisational development. So I used to be the HR director at Amnesty International and then moved into the housing sector. Jane and I worked one junction up from each other. And I mean, for me, I think what I love about coaching, it's that ability for people to talk about things that they don't normally talk about. And by exposing those thoughts, people move on. So that's where I've seen huge change for people, is when they can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Small practical actions are the thing that I've seen really transform then how people operate. So really happy to be here.
Lovely. So as you can see, we've got a very, very good panel here, lots of experience. And sort of my take on this whole area is I've been a coach for over 20 years, and my background's HR and OD. Worked at Manchester City Council, at the Central Manchester Foundation Trust, and in mental health. So quite a varied experience. And I think for me, the power of coaching is that it empowers the person to do something versus blaming other people or conditions that might not be in their control. So it enables the individual to take control. And we're doing quite a lot of work with our organisations on things like strengths-based conversations, which is coaching, empowering BME staff to step up into leadership roles. So there's quite a lot of impact that can be felt through coaching. So in terms of our first conversation topic, we've all worked for some big organisations. We're working in them now. We're working with them now. What does successful organisational coaching look like from an organisation's perspective? What do we think? Yeah,
I don't mind going on that one. So for me, working in an organisation, a large organisation, what I found made the biggest difference was buy-in from the top. And that was just so critical. So having the CEO lead on organisational development and developing a coaching culture was so critical in terms of getting all the leaders to buy in. And for people within the organisation to see that coaching doesn't have to be and shouldn't be punitive. Because so many people think that simply by having a conversation with another person and opening up, that it shows signs of weakness. So by having the CEO right from the top of the organisation say, I work with a coach, I have worked with a coach for over 20 years, was really important in terms of helping people to see that high-performing individuals have conversations about how they can achieve more.
How did you get top leaders on board then?
Well, I was very lucky actually. They kind of came to that conclusion themselves, which was great, absolutely great. It was having a conversation that was almost against an open door. So that was very fortunate. But then it was still a continuous exercise in terms of getting other leaders on board. And so it was about showing the benefits that coaching could bring to them, to their performance, to the success of their teams.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to contribute? Thanks, Juliet. There you go.
Hi, I agree that definitely you know, that kind of leadership and top leadership management support. I think there had to be a sort of an underlying cultural ethos that that people, the staff and people are there to learn. It's a learning organisation, that there's a sort of an ethos that we're continuously learning and coaching. If that's not in place, it is, I guess it's that kind of moving away from that heroic leadership model, that command and control, you know, somebody, one person knows all the answers. If you haven't got that kind of in place, I think that's going to be really tricky to implement coaching as a culture. I think it's not something you can just parachute in. You need to kind of create some conditions whereby it will land really well. And that is about working with your senior leaders and making sure that they're on board with what you're trying to do. But then also, you know, kind of engaging the as in Oshri's work, you know, the bottoms, and bottoms, so that people actually are bought in. So I think creating those conditions at learning organisations really.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. To build on that, we have looked at some principles of successful organisational coaching and driving the coaching culture. And to both points, absolutely. Organisational growth mindset, where there's that culture of learning and growing and not fearing failure, and not, you know, actually knowing that you can learn from your mistakes. Having that top level buy-in is absolutely key. They absolutely role model things throughout the organisation, having the role model. We also looked at giving more people capability to coach. So actually getting more people internally accredited in their coaching skills, and then giving access to more people to have coaching, so it starts permeating through the organisation on a cultural basis, and that then coaching becomes more expected. In the moment coaching, the coffee coaching, kind of by the water machine, in the moment coaching, rather than let's have this formal conversation that people start to fear. Let's get this in a cultural way to really make a difference, so it becomes expected and people will then see the benefits of coaching. Sorry, Emma, you were.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
right.
Joe. Yeah, Emma, you were waiting patiently. There you go.
Thank you very much. I think just building on that point, the whole kind of myth busting of coaching having to be, let's go for a 2-hour conversation, to actually, we coach, you hear someone on the phone, you can go into coaching mode as a manager, and for me, changing that mindset for managers is always a battle around what is coaching. And the whole, if you are struggling, there's so much evidence out there around, if you want to present your business case around why coaching is a good thing, just Google it. You know, that's where people best learn, and it works. So if you have got that kind of resistance at the top, I think it's really, really hard, but you can go in there with some figures to help support why you're doing it.
I'll just add to that. Thank you. And I think there's also the thing about leading from the top is it's really important to build that trust. I think people can be quite skeptical about what coaching can be, and I think there is still a sense that coaching can be manipulative in some ways, that you might ask somebody what they think, and that person gives ideas, but then they're kind of dismissed, and so it has to really come from the top, that they genuinely mean it, they're really taking on board the coaching culture and what it actually means. And that really does come from role modelling it and empowering people and building that sense of trust that people do then start to buy into it. And I think that role model coming from both the top but also through all layers of the organisation, so that everybody can see the benefit, is a key part to actually start to build it throughout.
And I mean, just one last thought from me on that I often work with organisations where they think they're coaching, and then you'll observe the top team, and what they're doing is saying, "Oh, but have you thought about doing such and such?" And they're going into mentoring, and often that whole, showing people what coaching really is, often is the biggest battle that I face going in, just about.
Sorry, Cash, sorry. So I was just kind of reflecting as you're talking about, how, it's really tricky, isn't it? I think it's not one size fits all. And I'm thinking about my own organisation, Innovation Agency, and what we've been doing in the last kind of couple of years, and certainly building capabilities, etc. But one kind of cultural thing, so we established our values and behaviours and got behind that, did a lot of work around that. But then we do skills and knowledge sessions, and we did a focus on giving and receiving feedback. This was before kind of coaching was introduced, or that kind of concept, and just really normalising that actually it's okay to give feedback, and to invite feedback as well was for some people quite a big thing, and we did a whole kind of session around it, and really would encourage a very basic level to start there around actually, are we an organisation who seeks feedback from our staff or not, and on its very basic level, good place to start.
And feeling safe to give advice.
Absolutely.
That psychological safety of actually this feedback is being given to me with absolute positive intent. Positive feeling about feedback, and actually it's not to be feared like, oh, what have I done wrong? Actually, what have I done right?
And it's a big responsibility, because I think if you seek feedback, then there's a responsibility to actually do something about it. So, be prepared to put actions behind what you're doing.
So I've got a bit of a challenging question for you, just as a follow-on from that last conversation. So, coaching is, we've established coaching is great.
Preaching to the converted.
And I'm hoping that on the webinar, I'm preaching. But also, if you've got any questions for us, please let us know. We've got a full team behind the camera giving me all the various thumbs up and whatnot. That everything's going all right. Yes. So hopefully that's still going to be the case. So if you've got any questions for us, just please let us know. And also, if you're enjoying this, let us know that as well, because actually we want to be able to do more webinars like this, and topics like coaching are right for this kind of format. So my question then is a follow-on from, successful organizational cultures for coaching. We can read quite a lot about that. But for me, what happens when, for example, a leadership team or a leader or a department, or for whatever reason, people are in the grip, okay? When they're in the grip. And it goes back to a point that you made about time. So, for example, at the moment, if you ask leaders across organisations, coaching is seen as a luxury because it takes a lot of time. However, there are ways of doing it at a rapid pace. So, at our last coaching network, for those of you that attended, we did something on micro coaching. So, coaching in the moment, 10 minutes. What are the sorts of questions that work, and how do you get somebody from A to Z in 10 minutes, where they resolve the issue that they're trying to work with, and they feel better? So that was all what micro coaching was all about. But in terms of this question or prompt, what happens when you're working with leadership teams that are in the grip, and the natural style takes over, which might be command and control, it might be whatever it might be? How do you tackle that?
Were you going?
No, you go.
Okay, you go first.
I think that is always the case, that sense of it's so much quicker to tell. So it's that positioning for people around why is coaching a better thing to do in that moment. For me, it's about doing team coaching with the top team. So picking up what you were saying, Joe or Julia, actually, it might have been around that whole developing internal expertise. Yes. So you're not going to be there once you've walked out of the door, and how do you keep them challenging each other as a top team around, actually it is better to coach. So the team coaching concept for me is what works, developing their expertise to be able to do it with each other.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's a silver bullet, and I think you're right. I think if you teach people that actually, if we have more coaching conversations, that actually they won't be in the grip so often, because you're empowering people to solve problems themselves rather than running up a chain of command and back down again. So I think actually in the longer term, it's more effective for the organisation, because you're allowing people to solve problems in real time without having to consult.
Totally. And I think if more people understood how people think and behave, and the leadership team knowing actually how do people adopt new skills, how do they change their behaviours, if they had that greater understanding of either psychology or a little bit of neuroscience in there, what's going on in people's brains here, recognise that actually to just tell somebody to do something doesn't always work, or it has a really short-term impact, and actually to allow people to think through them for themselves. One, they're more likely to come up with a way better solution, and two, they're more likely to adopt it because it's their own thoughts and their idea. And I think more and more organisations are waking up to the power of coaching. There's still a lot that are in the grip, and I think the more we get that message out there about the difference that coaching can make across the organisation throughout all the areas, and that people start to feel and see the difference, feeling the difference in a culture, the impact will be far greater. The stats are out there, like Emma said, they really are, to really, I suppose, convince those leadership team and give them examples of great coaching, coach them, team coaching as well, definitely.
Great.
Sorry, Sean.
Thank you. And just to add to that, I think there's also helping people become aware of when it's happening, when they're actually getting to that point where it's suddenly they're going to kick into that command and control. So understanding what it is that's happening, recognising their own emotions in that moment, and getting to that point where they actually themselves recognise that they can intervene before that happens and make a difference in that moment. I think that also helps them role model things for other people around them as well. So part of what we can do as coaches is to help people gain that awareness and understanding of what's happening for them internally, so that they're actually able to do something about it early.
Sorry, I'm just mindful of time. We've got a couple of other themes, and I'm sure we can weave some of our comments into the next area of conversation, which is about keeping your coaches. So I'm looking at coaches that are internal, that you've developed for your organisation to get a movement going on the coaching culture. So question to you all is, how do you keep your coaches engaged and developed? Well, engaged first, developed second. How do we do that? You want to?
Yes.
Yeah? There you go.
I was desperate to get in on
Good.
that last
You were.
bit then.
Yeah. So you can weave that in. Yeah.
So I'd echo what people said about self-awareness being a big part of that, and understanding when they're reaching the in the grip moment. But I won't say any more about that, Cash. So keeping coaches engaged. Yeah, I think it is a tough one, because people are doing their jobs usually, and as we know, organisations move so fast. Everything is, we live in what they call a VUCA, however you pronounce that, environment.
Do you want to say what? Do you know what it is?
So the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous context in an organisation now. So things are coming at people on a rapid pace. So it is very hard for people to think about fitting coaching in to their working life. But there are lots of solutions to that. I think the big thing for me around keeping coaches engaged is around CPD. So building CPD into the learning and development agenda, to the programme, the annual programme. So once people have been trained as coaches, keeping their professional practice up to date with what's new out there in the coaching world, for helping them to bring that into their own practice. And something else I would add to that, not to take up too much time, but it's about coaching supervision. So I'm a coach supervisor as well as a coach. And I think that's really important that coaches take time out with a supervisor to reflect on their own practice and think about keeping that at the best it can possibly be, taking some time out for themselves. Okay.
Yeah. So just a quick question then, in terms of CPD, what sorts of CPD do people internally find most useful, most helpful? Any ideas on
Do you
that?
want me to come back on that?
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. Okay.
So the kind of things that I organise are events where you bring all the coach footprint back together, share practice, but you get guest speakers in, so people who are able to offer something new on their existing learning, and asking people what they need, what they want to hear about, is also useful in terms of CPD.
Right.
And also, I think some of the membership organisations, so the Association for Coaching and the European Mentoring Coaching Council, they also organise network events, and what's interesting through that is that you get to hear some of the latest models and different perspectives on how you could actually use those frameworks and models in terms of your own coaching practice, and that can be applicable for both internal and external coaches as well. So that would be a good way of bringing in some new ideas into the coaching pool.
And just to add around the engagement piece for coaches, I think that the value that the organisation places on what they do is key, because what I'll sometimes hear is we'll train up coaches internally, and then their manager doesn't really agree with it to give them the permission to do it. So it is that top-down buy-in to the process. Again, I think that it's fundamental around keeping them engaged. Does the business value it? Have they got the time to be able to do it?
Yeah, I was going to just say that point as well about kind of visibly showing the organisation that you value it, and that might be coach awards, mentor awards, etc. And also I guess keeping people motivated and engaged is something around the in the moment coaching, every time coaching, and that becoming a way of we do things. So it might not be that formal space, but I think things around supervision, definitely giving people an opportunity to go off. I think supervision is a great place for when you are maybe doing some CPD, as understanding what's bubbling up in those conversations, that you can then curate and put something on for people that there is of interest, or that are challenges that people are coming up with. So yeah, some of the things.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of things for coaching. For the coaches, it's about giving them more access to coaching. So more and more coaching, they will learn themselves a lot, as well as obviously the coaching learning a lot and gaining a lot of self-awareness. So I think all these points add to a coach being engaged and develop, but CPD is absolutely vital.
I was going to, it's a kind of contributing to discussion, but also a question. So one of the things we were thinking about as we're moving forward is around tying coaching into annual appraisals, to say, what are the challenges that are bubbling up through your annual appraisals, and offering a kind of formal, through the year, 3 formal coaching sessions for you to use with our bank of coaches. And I wonder if anyone's used a similar approach or any experience of that.
I don't know whether it's the same thing, but I did introduce career coaching as part of annual appraisals. So having conversations about where people wanted their careers to go, to move in the future, and what they needed to get there. I don't know whether that's the same kind of thing, but it's something that I introduced into the performance management process where I used to be employed.
That's useful. Thanks.
I think that the concept of having appraisal and coaching connected is a really strong concept, because actually fundamentally the appraisal conversation, or whatever we call it in our organisations, is about the individual and their development and their aspiration, and how they perform ultimately to fulfil their role. And I think it's a really smart thing to link coaching in a much more measurable, tangible way to those conversations, because ultimately you want people to feel valued and actually be valued because you've given them the time through coaching. But I think the internal pool or internal resource of coaches is crucial to that. Okay, so I'm just looking at my team over there who are. Have we got any questions from the webinar? Okay,
we have. Yeah,
do you want to shout them out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
So let's just find them.
If you tell me who's asking the question as well, that would be helpful.
Paula Wiley.
Oh, hi, Paula.
Question.
Yeah.
She says, what are your tips on the reality that not all managers or leaders are not great coaches, but feel that they are?
Oh, like it, Paula. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
So, I mean, I think that is the most common experience probably for all of us, that when we're running coaching training, that people will say, I am really good at this, and then you get them to practice it in the session and they're not coaching at all. So gently.
Well, would they come to the session? Is the other question. How do we engage them to come to the session?
Good point. I think if someone doesn't want to be there, it's really hard to make them come. So if they don't believe coaching is a good thing, for me, coming on a training course probably isn't the right thing for them. It would be the peer-to-peer challenge support probably. But
sorry, I'm just I'm just wondering if that's where the accreditation is really important and the professionalisation of coaching.
Yeah.
Actually, people can say they're a coach, but but they're not. But actually having some objective measure of having done an accredited program where you're learning about self-awareness, about raising awareness, about coaching, is really important.
Again, I think more and more organisations are allowing internal employees to be accredited coaches. I think it's something that's really growing in popularity. However, I'm not sure that answers Paula's question, because if people think they're great at something and they're actually not, that feels like it comes back to the feedback comment of getting that culture of giving and receiving feedback, and holding the mirror up to that person of this is great coaching. This is the feedback we've had.
So sorry, we've got another question. So I hope, Paula, that sort of goes some way towards answering your question. I think the comment about giving them some feedback is crucial, actually, and actually giving them some feedback in the moment, and actually building on what you said, engaging them to come along to some development and actually almost not be watched or assessed, but sometimes it can be simple as being as part of a coaching trio and having somebody else watch you in a safe environment and give that. That is one way that you could do it. Second question.
The next question coming in is from the Northwest Leadership Academy.
Oh, hello, guys.
The question is, do you have any advice on the business case for coaching in terms of demonstrating the impact and ROI?
Okay, so we're looking for coaching impact and return on investment in coaching programs.
I could have a go at answering this. So, as part of Coaching Culture magazine, we looked into a great example, because we get asked all the time about ROI, and it's a really difficult thing to measure, and we can't deny that. However, an example of an organisation that did a really great example was GSK, where they did measure the impact of their coaching culture and how they went about coaching throughout the organisation, and the ROI was unbelievably phenomenal from the amount they spent versus the return on their investment. And it was all about driving coaching culture. They had a coaching academy. The business units that used the coaching paid for it out of their own business unit budget, and the impact was phenomenal, and it was about driving that coaching culture. So it's all about having all those cultural elements in place to show that impact from an ROI perspective, and it is a harder thing to do.
But it sounds it sounds like, you know, it's almost, it takes time, it takes investment, it takes diligence, it takes hard work, doesn't it? I'm going to move us on just because we've got another question. I want to make sure that our audience that's on the other side of that camera there is able to interact with us. So do you want to read it out?
Yeah, so this question is coming from Jackie P.
Oh yeah, hi Jackie. Yeah, it's all, yeah.
So your friend.
So everyone's on, yeah.
The question is, hi, listening from Cheshire, some good discussions here. Do you have any tips for working with leaders who are emerging from very different cultures, some that use coaching and some that don't?
Jane, do you fancy that one? Putting you on the spot. So what do we think then? So how do we work with leaders who perhaps come from a slightly different background? I'm certainly aware of leaders joining local government who perhaps came from a military background or a science background, and I think that's more and more, that's going to happen more and more with cross-sector working. So any thoughts? Yeah, have a go. Yeah, there you go.
So I think for me, working with organisations that have merged, it's the whole, so what are our values as this new organisation, and really getting the leaders to think through, why should I care about that in terms of those values. And then the coaching argument is overwhelming, as we've said, around it. That is what makes the biggest difference. So whatever background people are coming into, the coaching argument is there, irrespective of sector. So it's that, it's underpinning, this is why I should care about who we now are, and coaching is the thing to then develop. Anything else? Pia?
So I'd agree with you there too, Emma. I think it's very much about the values for the shared organisation, for the new organisation once they are developed. Going back a little bit, right to the start of due diligence, I think there's a really important piece for organisations who are emerging around a cultural audit. And there's a lot of, as everybody knows, before organisations do come together, there's a lot of work done around the financial due diligence, the business case due diligence. There's probably less time spent on cultural audit work. I'm not saying all organisations don't do it, because some do undertake a cultural audit, but they might spend less time on that than they do on the financial aspect. And I think spending more time in that area helps the organisations to see whether the two cultures, the two operating cultures, are likely to work and be a success in the future. And I think that's a really important part to spend time on during organisations coming together and make that meaningful.
Thank you very much. So we thought an hour was a long time. It clearly isn't. We need to get through some of these other questions that we've got now. So one of the reasons that we pulled this webinar together was to explore the concept that the team and I here at Northwest Employers, at the Interchange team, have been working on for about 2 years now, which is cross-sector coaching. And you know, there's things to learn. There's been many successes. So a question for the panel, just based on that as a bit of background. So, you know, so what's the benefit of being a cross-sector coach, receiving coaching from somebody who might not understand your context, your organisation? Yeah, want to take that one, Jo?
I'm happy to answer that. In terms of coaching, you don't have to know about the sector. You just have to have to be able to build a level of trust, rapport, and listen and ask some great questions. So actually understanding a sector, I think is really important if you're going to be doing cross-sector mentoring, whereas cross-sector coaching, I think if somebody has the ability to listen and learn and replay back what they've heard, and if it is about offering solutions, then a coach perhaps, which is unusual, but if they do want to offer something, then they could come up with something really new and innovative because they are from a different sector. I'm not so sure about the importance of having to know all about that sector, rightly or wrongly. I think knowing about great questions and having the ability to listen, that's my perspective on this.
Can I just ask you to clarify cross-sector coaching a bit more? From my sense is it's when you're a coach in a sector and you coach someone else from a different sector.
Correct. Yeah.
So you would have to
local
be internal.
government and health.
Yeah. Sorry.
So yeah, it's when you bring two people together to work in a coaching relationship who are from vastly different sectors. So the one that comes to mind most prominently is local government and health, because of all the work that's happening around integration, and it's about building understanding and relationships between those two sectors. But then, the team match people from completely different sectors. So police and health, for example, happens quite a lot. Police and local government happens. Housing and health. Yeah. So there's lots of crossovers. Does that clarify your question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So any other contributions on this one then? Sian, do you want to have a go? Yeah.
Thank you. And I agree. I think what's also interesting is that if you're cross-sector, because you don't know much about the sector, you're more likely to ask potentially what might be seen as naive questions. But in many ways, I think those are the questions that actually give you real insight and can almost make somebody sit back and go, oh, because they've gone with a story, they've gone with assumptions, they've gone with a lot of history. And somebody coming from an outside perspective can almost come in and give you that slight change, because they don't know the story, they don't know the background, and that can potentially be the catalyst that helps somebody look at something completely differently.
Totally agree, and I think the challenge around when you look at sector, the kind of like me bias that you'll see at the top team, everyone looks quite similar often. The benefit of cross-sector coaching is the challenge of what's going on in the unconscious, and I do think that the naive questions often are the ones that get people to really do that. Oh, hang on, why am I thinking that?
How do you get it off the ground then? So if you're working in an organisation that has, for example, coaches in all the various CPD events and whatnot, how do you get something? How do you sell the cross-sector angle to your internal coaches?
So are you thinking that the internal coaches are the ones who are resisting joining a cross-sector group? What's your thought around the question?
It's about how do you enable the internal coaches to perhaps coach people that are not from their organisation.
Yes.
And the whole argument about cost effectiveness, etc., comes into the fore. But actually, what we're finding with certainly public sector, the cross-sector work we're doing, is that a lot of the issues are common across public sector, and then when you go even wider to private sector, it's the same again. Yeah. So quite often the internal challenges are external, societal, and actually that's a really good frame for the coaches to work from when they're doing their own work.
So thinking through this and thinking about different times when I've attempted to get these kind of things off the ground, managed to get it working in a local authority area across local government, with the housing association, with the leisure trust. So it was helpful to have cultures that were like-minded, really, all bought into the coaching culture approach and the benefit that it could have in all of our organisations. But the hurdles that we came across were not so much that people couldn't coach outside of their own sector. People could, and the benefits were there. People were achieving results from doing it. It was about time. It was about time to spend on coaching. It was about that momentum that you need to keep with developing a coaching culture, because it isn't something that you send people off on a coaching course and then you've developed a culture. It isn't that. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes people within the organisation continuing to reinforce that this is something that is valuable, this is something that will make a difference. And as you get people that move on from an organisation who've been keen to get those kind of things going, it does seem to lose momentum. And you know, it's a shame for that to happen, but it does take that constant effort.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing that I'm reflecting on as I hear everyone speaking is around creating the spaces for these cross-sectional folks to come together. And I was thinking about the coach programme that we're running, coming towards the end of now. We've run over the last year coaching for improved workplace culture. We have 8 teams who from across, well, it was invited from across health and care. But actually in the room, what we've got is a real microcosm of a system, if you like. So we've got mental health trust, we've got acute, we've got NHS 111, we've got community nursing teams. And what we've seen there is a real value of them understanding the pressures of the system, of the whole system. So, you know, if we have one of our teams is a team leader, an orthopedic surgeon. Now, if he was to go off sick, for example, then the community team would feel that, because they would have more people who had bad knees who would need. So I think for me, it really helped people see the bigger picture. So the more spaces we can create where we've got the whole system in there to have those conversations, it's really for the better. Brilliant.
I think just reflecting again on comments, I think there is something very deliberate about cross-sector coaching, which is all around place-based thinking. So, for example, if you've got a place like Lancashire or Greater Manchester or Liverpool City region, and you know you've got 5 or 6 prominent organisations in there, all with very strong coaching cultures, then that's surely good for that place, isn't it? And actually, you know, what a shame if those organisations weren't doing some of that cross-sector coaching, that cross-sector pollination, because actually, as a coach, okay, it's a process, you're listening, you're there, you're asking questions, but actually you take some of that away with you as part of your own learning that comes out through supervision. But I think there is something about being very deliberate with cross-sector coaching. And across the Northwest, that's one of the reasons that we do what we do with Interchange. Actually, for the Northwest as a place, we want it to be resilient. We want there to be organisations that are connected across each other's boundaries through coaching. I'm getting a finger waving from the back of the screen. There's a question?
There is a question. It's from Northwest Employers.
Oh, from us?
Yeah. The question is, so how do you enable cross-sector coaching?
Okay. Is that for everyone?
Were you asked that in your job interview?
Oh, yeah. How do you enable it? I think it builds on what I just said earlier on, about having very good coaching cultures internally first, but then almost, again, creating the need for place. I think that's where it comes from, because working with place. So quite often through some of our work with leaders in GM, as an example, we get the almost the challenge between what's the benefit for the organisation of this approach that we're undertaking. What's the benefit to place? And actually,
perhaps you could explain a bit about what place is, if this is kind of global to maybe people don't know.
So places, for example, working with neighbourhoods and communities. So people who provide public services to those communities in place. So and health. So at the moment we're working with lots of different places, and we're looking at sort of between 30 to 50,000 population size. So each place has its own place-based integrated team, etc. And for us, there's something about connecting, a bit like the example I was talking about earlier with health and local government integration, social care integration. When the relationships are better, the services are better. Yeah, so it's almost building on that as a template for the rest of the Northwest and country, actually. So that's what we mean by place.
Yeah.
So it's creating that need within the organisation's leadership, people that are coaches, to want to coach for the good of their place.
And I suppose as we're creating place, and as we're moving to creation to place, and within the strategic transformation plans, those spaces are forming. So there are opportunities within there for us to enable coaching.
Absolutely.
And could I speak to that one, Cash, actually? I mean, just listening to everybody speak there and thinking about different organisations working perhaps in the same place, in the same locality, it makes total sense financially to join up and share that practice, doesn't it? Because organisations will be making an investment into coaching and developing coaches. So it makes sense to work collaboratively, to share those coaches across sector, because a lot of managers that I have worked with in a coaching conversation, whether I've coached them or talked to them about having a coach, one of the things that is very important for them is confidentiality, of course, absolutely confidentiality. And working with a coach from another organisation can really give people that confidence, that extra confidence, that they don't know the exact detail of the system that person is operating in. And that can also be an added benefit to that cross-sector working.
Absolutely. I think there's another question, am I right, Will?
There is a question.
Okay.
The question is, and quite a fitting one, can technology play a part in creating a coaching culture, perhaps by making it more affordable and more accessible?
Interesting. Okay.
Who's asked that
That's
question?
that. Are we allowed to say?
That is Adam K from Warrington.
Right. Adam from Warrington. Joe, do you want to answer that one? I'll try and answer
Yeah, I
that.
will. Thank you. I think absolutely the answer is yes to that.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you, Adam K from Warrington. Yes, I think it's a new thing. It's really important to give coaching accessibility to more and more people. Not everybody gets the opportunity to be coached by an accredited coach, and actually there's great new solutions coming out at the moment from a coaching culture perspective. We're working on a digital self-coaching solution to allow people to give them space to think differently and to put new thoughts and actions into place, raising their own self-awareness, micro-coaching, organisational insights for the mindset and goal setting. And actually technology, I think, is going to be so important now and in the future for those people who have been born with technology. More and more people are expecting digital to play a part in coaching, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. From the Innovation Agency, of course.
Digital.
But I think we've got better and better video conferencing facilities, and so distance doesn't play a part in coaching anymore. In fact, there's studies to show that actually video conferencing coaching can be as effective as face-to-face coaching, and certainly we're seeing more and more of that, and I think that will definitely improve access for people to coaching.
Got another question? Yeah.
One more question. This is from Coaching Academy.
Okay.
What would you say to someone who's considering coaching but may have misconceptions about what it is and who it's for?
Okay.
That's my gang, I think.
Yeah, if you can find them later.
Cash, can I answer that?
Yeah, if you want. I'm just looking over here if anyone wants to have a go at it as well. Yeah. Go on,
I
Joe.
think I first asked them what their conceptions and misconceptions are. And as a coach, I'd want to seek first to understand. I'd want to understand exactly what experiences they were talking about, what evidence they've had, and share the positive benefits and outcomes that you can get from coaching. But I'd certainly want to ask them questions back to get them thinking through what exactly did they mean. So I'd actually give them an example of coaching.
Lovely, thank you. Sean?
I'd absolutely go with all of that. And I would also suggest that they speak to a number of different coaches as well, so that they actually get a sense of what it might be like to work with a number of different people, and make sure that they have the right rapport with somebody. And I think through that they'll also get a more rounded sense of what coaching is, because I think certainly with qualified coaches they'll get the very similar viewpoint about coaching, but the personal part of it will come into that as they talk to more and more people.
Yeah. Okay. Next question then. So thank you everyone. Thank you for the questions. folks on the webinar. So this is the final question, and it's a bit of a tricky one, and it builds on something that Joe, you mentioned earlier on about self-coaching. There's a lot of new technology out there, apps like, for example, is Mindset. That's the app, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it calls, not Mindset, it's called Headspace. The app's called Headspace, where you can almost teach yourself how to meditate, and it's good for your well-being, etc., etc. Now, could something like that work for coaching? And the question is about, is it actually possible to self-coach? I think all three. Yeah. There you go.
Go down the line.
Yeah. I think there is a certain amount that you can do yourself. So certainly self-reflection, actually taking the time out for any particular perhaps conversation or a situation you've been in or an event. Taking that time out to think about how that was for you, how you felt about it, how you felt the interactions had gone, what you might do differently and how you might do it differently. Raising your self-awareness about that and then being very deliberate about the next time you encounter that, you can do that, and that is a type of self-coaching. I think it goes only so far because there is still a sense that there may be things going on for you that you're not necessarily aware of, and it actually takes somebody to highlight that to you, to reflect it back to you. That enables you to then go, oh, okay. Because I think there is always a blind spot in the way in which you think about yourself and you look at yourself, and it does take somebody outside to be able to highlight that. But I certainly don't think there's a lot that you can do yourself to think about the mindset, think about how you cope and deal with different situations, and the more you work on that, the more you can actually do that for yourself without necessarily needing to do that with somebody else.
Thanks, Sean. Jane?
I would absolutely agree with everything you've said there, Sean. I think certainly this is something I do every day, and reflect on how the day has gone, how it's gone for me, whether anything could have gone differently, whether I could have done anything differently. But I think Sean is quite right, and that can only go so far. And the blind spot, yes, obviously. We're not aware of it, but I think there is some self-coaching that can support our practice on a day-to-day basis, but it isn't the same as sitting down with a coach, having somebody listen, because that is just such a special experience, having somebody listen to you, ask questions, ask great questions of you, to build self-awareness. So I agree with Sean. I think it can only go so far. I don't know whether you can have anything.
No, nothing further to add. Self-enlightenment.
Yeah.
It takes a long time.
I think I think it goes hand in hand with some tools and techniques that you can give people away. Yeah. So, for example, you might go through the drama triangle or transactional analysis, and you might then reflect yourself, self-coach, what ego state was I in when I was talking to that person, how might I have done that better. So I think there's some really great tools that as coaches we can facilitate the introduction of. I think it would be difficult to learn those without that coaching conversation on a one-to-one.
Yes.
But yeah. Cash, you're looking at me here. So I suppose it goes back to the technology piece before, and there's a level of a shameless plug here on coaching culture and the solutions part of coaching culture, in terms of the questions that are put together to raise somebody's self-awareness in order to allow them digitally to self-coach through the questions, their profiling, and the micro-coaching questions can really help somebody. It's not there to replace a human coach, but absolutely to enable somebody to see the benefit of self-coaching and to really, I suppose, get out to the masses, because not everybody gets the luxury of having accessibility to a professional qualified coach. So I think there's some great things that are coming for the future.
I think just listening to you all there. There's something that, there's self-coach and self-talk, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got that constant
Yeah.
dialogue going on in your head about, am I going to be able to do this? Am I good enough
Yeah.
to do this? And it's all of that. And
Yeah.
how do you, and coaching is about sometimes, getting the person to take a step back and look at that and
Yeah.
ask them some questions about how useful that is. And I think for me, there's something about being able to self-coach in looking at the way you talk to yourself, and there are tools, techniques, and methods available. But I think there's still a lot that can be done through the power of technology. Certainly, something that could be in your pocket, like Headspace, to help you work some of that through. So I think the jury's still out on that one. But I certainly think it's an area that we can have a look at and think about together. So I'm just mindful of time. Just going to check back in with the team behind the camera just to see any further questions, comments, anything like that. So I'm going to bring the discussions here to a close. Just want to thank each and every one of you for coming along and contributing so well at our first ever webinar. And just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that's tuned in today. And if, like I said at the beginning, if you like what you saw, let us know. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because we want to do more of these sorts of things. And I think in closing, I think having this conversation has brought out some key bits of learning for us. I think specifically around how do you engage leaders who might think they're good coaches but not. I think there's something there for us to think more about. There's something about what you said there, Jane, about due diligence before two organisations come together to form one. And actually, for me, that's what's the identity, therefore, of the new organisation, of its leaders and everybody that works within it, and what role does coaching have to play within that. And then the cross-sector discussion, I think, was really useful in that we started to look at some common issues, but we asked the so what question. I think the answer was because we need our places to be stronger and more resilient. Yeah. So in closing, I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to share, and I'll bring things to a close.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.